we've seen an increase of about 7.5 to 8% year over year. I like that. It's healthy. It's predictable. Where this massive jump that we just seen in the last 2 years, I think it's scary and anything.
How is it going in Toronto? Like, what's the situation there?
Well, in Toronto, I mean, we're in from a COVID perspective, pandemic perspective, we're at the time of this recording right now, January 2022, we are in a complete lockdown. Again, I think they're calling it phase 2 or phase 3. I really do forget, but the cases are rising from what they're showing on the TV and through media. But from a real estate perspective, I think the first 2 months, March, April 2020, things cooled down, obviously, because nobody knew what this thing was. But right around May, June, you started to see activity again, an uptick in volume of sales, and like people here in the Greater Toronto area, that for your out of province and out of country listeners and viewers, that's a 75 kilometer radius, the Greater Toronto area. Numbers have been increasing month over month. In fact, this past year, 2021, we saw the most sales that we ever have seen on the Toronto Real Estate Board, which is a little over 120,000 sales, which means that there's 240,000 people. Like, it takes a buyer and a seller, right, to do a deal. And so it's for us, it's really basic economics here in the GTA, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of demand and very, very limited supply. We here in the GTA have been seeing that for the last 15, 20 years easily. What's been different this time around, it seems like it's right across North America and really right across some parts of the world as well, right? And so that's been different. I haven't seen that before in my 17-year career in real estate, where the limited supply has been like right across the board. Here in the GTA, as I mentioned, we're quite used to that. Because we're on an island, right? We're on a real estate island. On the south side of us, you can't build. We haven't figured out what Dubai has, where you can build on water, right? We have a lake. And then on the northern part, we don't have the mountains like beautiful British Columbia does. But what we have is land that's restricted to develop on, right? It's called the Greenbelt legislation. It's a legislation to preserve the land so builders can't build on that land, which makes us very similar to Manhattan, right? We're on this little island. We can't build in certain parts. We have a lot of people coming in. And for 2022, I think we're going to have a little over 400,000 people coming into this 75 kilometer radius. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to values. I think I know what's going to happen, but it'll be interesting to see.
So what has happened to values in the last couple of years?
On average, you've seen an increase of about 17 to 18% year over year, right? It's probably close. In 2020, we saw like 20.1%. In 2021, we saw a little under 17. So call it on average for the last 2 years, 17 to 18% year over year. Personally, like, before being a real estate broker, I'm a real estate investor. And I gotta tell you, like, I'm not happy about that. A lot of people say, you're a real estate agent, you're making hundreds of millions of dollars because what's happening with values. And that's not what we wanna see. Like, if you look back to the last 100 years in the GTA, we've seen an increase of about 7.5 to 8% year over year. I like that. It's healthy. It's predictable. where this massive jump that we just seen in the last 2 years, I think it's scary. And anything, just like in life, anything that goes up that fast does come down. It's just a matter of how much, right? And so values have gone up, limited supply. What I really like to look at, the metric and the number, I always laugh with my clients. I say, look, if you drop me in a remote place in the world, I'll tell you what type of market they're in, what type of real estate market they're in, based on the metric of months of inventory. How many homes and condos, how many properties are on the market, and how long will it take for them to sell based on the previous month? And so right now we ended 2021 with less than 3 weeks of inventory, meaning if no one would to put their property on the market, it would take less than 3 weeks for everything on the market to sell. That's a very, very strong seller's market. If you want to know what a balanced and a buyer's market is, a balanced market is anywhere from about 3.5 to 5.5 months of inventory, and a buyer's market, I apologize, is 6 months and above. We're less than 3 weeks. Like 3 weeks of inventory, and that's all based on the fact that we have so many people that are wanting to get into a property.
Yeah. So I don't think you are old enough to remember like the last big crash in Toronto, are you?
Well, I mean,
Look like a very young guy.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'll let my parents know. It must have something to do with the DNA. And I'm 40 years old now. I just turned 40 a few weeks ago. And so to answer your question, the last big crash, which I think it's safe to say happened probably in the early 90s, we had a dip back in 08, 09. I used to make the joke that when the states sneeze, we catch a cold here. And I don't know if it's too soon to make those kind of jokes anymore. But what happened back in 08 and 09 was obviously the financial crisis. There was a dip in values back in that time, but it really only lasted about 5 months for us here. In terms of the big crash in 91, I was 10 years old at that time. But I do know what happened. Like I knew what happened. And look, a lot of it had to do with the government in power. Rent control came in at that time, threw off a lot of stuff that happened here in Toronto. But I think ever since the 2000s, we haven't really looked back. You've seen that curve, right? And it's been very, very consistent at that 7.5% to 8% year over year.
Mm-hmm. So, what is the cause of this? Is it immigration? Are people moving from other parts of Canada? Like, why does the inventory keep shrinking and shrinking and shrinking?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's demand. Like, that's it. That's what it is. I shouldn't say that's it, but that's one of the major reasons. We again have a little over 300,000 people on average for the last 6-7 years coming into the Greater Toronto Area. I mean, we just don't have enough places to house them. The other reason is historically low interest rates. Like you can get a 5-year fixed mortgage right now for slightly under 2%. On average 1.99 to about 2.2, 2.3%. Like we've never seen that before. The cost of borrowing is so cheap. Right? And so when you mix in the fact that you have very low interest rates, you don't have a lot of supply, values are going to continue to go up. People have been asking the question, when is the market going to crash? I got news for you. Until immigration stops in our country, the market's going to continue to go the way that it's going because we can't build fast enough. And we also only have a limited supply of land. Like, we only have so much land, and a lot of that in the Greater Toronto Area is restricted. And so because of that, you're just going to see values continue. And what's going to happen? And what's already really happened in the last, I'm going to say about 3-4 years in the GTA, like any other major city in the world, we've become a renter city. It's very tough to afford a home in Toronto now. I mean, average price point is a little over $1.1 million. So the average home buyer, first-time home buyer can't afford that, even with low interest rates, right? And so because of that, you have a lot more people renting. Now, as an investor, that's music to my ears and music to a lot of investors' ears, because now your prospect of customers who are your tenants has just widened, right? Because the people that were the guys and gals that were on the fence of thinking about possibly buying, well, they got pushed out of the market. They're either going to have to continue to rent or drive till they qualify, which means not having the ability to actually own property in the downtown core. I say that's very similar to the rest of the world, because if you look at Manhattan, London, Paris, downtown Vancouver, you really can't, like, you don't really see a lot of people who own real estate and live in those properties. The guys and gals that own those properties are investors. They're renting them out. So we've seen this before. History's just, like in everything else, it repeats itself, and it's really our only teacher. We've seen this before where major cities, you don't own and live in those properties.
Right.
Yeah, so true. So, what about are your agents mostly dealing with sellers or both buyers and sellers? Because we know it's much harder right now working with buyers, right?
Definitely. I mean, very blessed to have a team of 54 real estate agents that covers that 75-kilometer radius. Within that 75-kilometer radius, there is probably 300 micro markets. Like the south side of the Greater Toronto area is completely different than the north side, the east, and the west. In downtown Toronto, there's probably 45 micro markets alone. And so my team is probably on a 50-50 ratio. 50% of our clients are sellers, 50% are either move-up buyers, first-time home buyers, and investors. And so we definitely get to see the stats firsthand, like not only the stats in black and white numbers, but we know what's actually happening on the street. We know how tough it is from a buyer's perspective right now, right? I mean, just because you have a deposit check in hand, certified check, money order bank draft, and you're paying $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 over the asking price, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna get the property. And we see, and it's unfortunate, right? I mean, we see people who get discouraged in the process. And I understand it. Like, how many times do you want to get punched in the gut, right? By losing offers. I'm really just telling my clients, look, if you need to move, then it's one of those things. You got to take some punches, meaning losing some properties, losing offers. And look, the ones that you lost, and not to be all fluffy and philosophical, but I truly believe this after 17 years of experience, that those weren't meant to be. For whatever reason, you just got to keep on putting in offers, as well as maybe changing up the actual location that you're looking at, right? You might need to travel a little bit more, which generally means also that you're going to get a little bit more home, right? The condo is going to be a little bit bigger. The land for a semi-detached or a detached might be a little larger as well, right? But sometimes you have to drive a little bit further than where you were originally wanting to move. And for the first-time home buyers, and anybody who's maybe even thinking about doing it, for the second time, the dream home might not be the next home that you get. You might need to have some patience and work your way up the property ladder.
Yeah, makes sense. So I grew up in Mississauga, and I left the GTA in 1995. And it's changed so much. I've been back maybe 3-4 times since then. It's really, really changed. But what about Mississauga? So I remember as a little kid, they opened up the Square One shopping center, and then they built the 403 highway. And everybody said, that's crazy. It's in the middle of farms. It's in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's going to use that 403. Now it's like right in the middle, and it's packed all the time. So what is Mississauga like today?
Well, look, I mean, one major thing that's happened and happening in Mississauga is the new light rail transit that is just bringing in so many people into the area of Mississauga. And I mean, when we spoke about months of inventory in Toronto being a little less than 3 weeks, in Mississauga, it's less than 2 weeks. So that right away would tell you the story, right? I mean, average price point in Mississauga is a little under 1,050,000 right now, right? Values have increased north of 20% in Mississauga in all of 2021. It is a place where, as you mentioned, a couple of major highways, access to highways, which gets you right across to the city. You have a major shopping center, but you have a lot of major off corporations, RBC, Microsoft, and there's so many more that have now called Mississauga home. So it's a place that people want to be close to work as well, right? And then you have the south side of Mississauga, which is probably one of my favorite areas in all of Greater Toronto Area, which is Port Credit, right by the lake. Just beautiful lounges and restaurants, and it has the pier downtown in Port Credit, beautiful parks, community centers, and so it really is and lends itself to a family neighborhood. And it's no secret that Mississauga is going to continue to grow just like Toronto is.
Yeah, amazing. So when you say people need to drive maybe a little bit further to get a better deal or a little more house, what part of the province are we talking?
Well, look, I think certain parts of southern Ontario, where you go into the Guelphs and the Londons and the Kitchener and Waterloos, that's kind of going on the west side, and on the east side, you got to start to look at areas like Bowmanville, which is just east of Oshawa, in Durham, and then on the north side, I see people moving into the new markets, even further than Newmarket, into an area called Tottenham, where if you asked me 10 years ago, 7 years ago about Tottenham, I'd be like, where even is, I don't even know where that is, right? I mean, it would take forever to get there, and now there's massive subdivisions being built, and it's probably from downtown Toronto, we're talking about an hour and 15, 25, 30-minute drive, right? But that's where you're going to get something that's a little bit more affordable. So those are kind of the areas north, east, and west where I'm seeing people move, and where I'm recommending people start looking, because that, like, we're gonna start calling that GTA. Like, that's just what's gonna happen. Like, when at the start, like when you were back in '95, Luke, I mean, we were talking about we never mentioned the Greater Toronto Area. It was Toronto, and then Mississauga was not part of the GTA. Richmond Hill and Vaughan, none of these areas, Woodbridge, were part of the GTA. But that's just what happens to an expanding city.
Yeah. So you mentioned the light rail transit. Is that going through all of Mississauga? Like, where does that go now?
So that's going to go from Port Credit, like Lakeshore and Highway 10, so the most southern part of Mississauga, and that's going right up into Brampton.
Wow. Okay, so it's just up Highway 10.
Right on Highway 10. Right on Highway 10, and I think they're going to have another line that runs across Eglinton.
Okay. So is it connected to the Toronto subway yet? Or no, you gotta get a bus. No. You still got to take a bus, or it's going to be connected over to the airport, so to Pearson, and then Pearson takes you into Union Station. Yeah. Wow. Crazy. So do you run your team? So I'll just tell you, since we last spoke, I'm now the managing broker and part owner of a brokerage. So I've been a realtor for a long, long time, but I got my broker's license in 2017, and a company that's really growing asked me to join them. So I did this September. So September 2021. And,
congratulations.
So I'm kind of new at it. So tell me, do you run your team? Do you are you selling real estate? Are you running a team? Like, what are you doing?
Great question. I have a business partner, and he kind of manages the 54 agents, and I to answer your question, I still sell real estate. A lot of people think all I do is content, podcasting, and videos on the Instagrams and the TikToks of the world, but I still sell real estate. My team does a little over 700 transactions a year, out of which I probably do about 200. I don't tell anybody to impress them. It's more to really impress upon everyone. Like, especially the real estate agents that are listening right now, that you can design your business around your life. It doesn't need to be the other way around, where all you're doing is working, or you have to be out on the street. And not that there's anything wrong with like you door knocking and cold calling. Like if that's something that you really excel at and you like it, then amazing. Like cheers to you, right? I myself decided to run my business slightly different, where I said that, okay, look, I'm gonna produce an ungodly amount of content to the tune of 15 to 20 pieces a day on all the platforms. Okay, I'm gonna do it from this chair. I'm gonna do it in a t-shirt or a hoodie, and I'm gonna allow clients to watch my content, listen to my content through podcasting, read my blog on my website, watch some of my shorter form videos on those platforms, and let them make the decision if they want to continue to work with me. And it might be someone new in my world, or it might just be one of the 10,000, and literally 10,000 insiders that I've been cultivating for the 17 years. That's what I do for our organization. I set up all things, like I'm kind of the face for our client base, because I'm the one who kind of decided to take on podcasting about 3.5 years ago, changed the course of not only my business, my life. But I tell any real estate agent out there right now, like if you're not producing content, you're going to be left behind. And I don't mean that in a way to be like ultra harsh, but like unless you're thinking about retiring in the next couple of years, then just right off to the sunset and awesome and congratulations. But if you're wanting to be in this business for the next 5 to 7, 8 years and you're not producing some type of content, like a written blog on a consistent basis, images, really the holy grail is video, because you can do so much through video. You can really start the process of what I call repurposing, and the magic of repurposing content, which allows you to take a video like this, put the long form content on YouTube, but then you can clip little videos. You can rip out the audio, put it out on the iTunes and the Spotifys of the world. And it just goes on and on. The amount of content you can take from a 35, 40-minute conversation. But if you're not doing that as a real estate agent, then someone else is, and your clients, they might love you, and they might have worked with you in the past, but they don't walk around with your business card stapled on their heads. And so if you're not in front of them on a consistent basis, you're kind of like 007 James Bond secret agent stuff. Like you can't be a secret agent in 2022. And so if you're not producing content, I promise you, you're going to be left behind. Figure it out. You don't need to. And I know a lot of people who are like, oh my God, Jazz, but I'm not as good looking as Luke. I don't want to be doing the videos, and I don't have a team. You don't need a team in today's day and age. You can do it all from these phones. And one thing that the internet has taught us in the last 15 years, it all works. Meaning, you can be very good looking and not good looking. You could have my skin tone, you could have Luke's skin tone. You could be a boy, you could be a girl. You could have a lot of energy or be an introvert. Like it all works. It all works. Exactly. Right? It's just a matter of doing it consistently, A, and B, having patience to allow your community and tribe to get formulated. That takes a little bit of time. I'm not talking about 5 years. The bigger the ambition, the longer the time, in my opinion. But if you just do something consistently for 6 to 9 months, I promise you, you'll start to go to the grocery store, or you'll call a client, or they'll see you at an open house and they'll say, oh my God, Luke, I love those videos you do. That just starts to happen, right? And so I implore anybody who's a real estate agent right now who's listening, please, 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 spend the time and do a video a day. I don't care if it's 15 seconds and you put it on your story, or you do a podcast like this and rip out the content. Figure it out, because if, like I mentioned, if you're not doing it, know that other people are, and that's where your clients are going to go.
So true. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, and the more your true self starts to shine. And like you said, you're going to attract the people to you that like you. You're going to attract those people, and you're going to build that tribe.
I mean, I think you can speak to it yourself, right, Luke? Like you're at 200 and something videos. I have podcast episodes. I have a feeling if I go to your first 17, they weren't as good. You weren't as comfortable. You know what I mean? And here's my thing, right? For somebody who's watching or listening right now and saying, "Oh my God, like I can't. I'm not as comfortable as Jazz. I'm not as comfortable as Luke." Well, to compare your 10th video to my, I'm probably at like 4,500, 5,000 videos without any exaggeration. Yeah. It's an insult to yourself. It's also an insult to me. Like I'm putting in the reps. I've been putting in the reps. Luke has been putting in the reps. You can't compare that 10th video to my 4,000th video. You need to put in the reps yourself. And over time, the beautiful, beautiful effect of compounding takes over. You just get a little bit better every single time. You get a little bit more comfortable every single time, and then the peripheral stuff starts happening, meaning like you just start to realize, oh, people are not really watching me as hard as I thought they were. They're not really listening. Like they're not trying to like. How many times have I started in this video? I didn't say to Luke, Luke, sorry, can you stop the recording and can we start all over again? Like that's not what we do in a normal conversation. If I was having a beer with anybody who's listening right now, and I started and said, let me walk out of the bar and start this conversation again, you'd think I was on some type of drug. Like, what are you doing? Right? Like, can we just have a conversation with people, and it just happens to be in a lens, and you don't need to overthink this by meaning like, what am I going to talk about? You probably get questions already on a daily basis. And if you're not getting questions, then I want you to look at other people's platform, go on my Instagram, take all my videos, which one resonates with you, do the exact same video. Like I'm here to, like, you're not imitating me, you're not copying me, you're not stealing from me. I want you to go do it. Why? Because there's more than enough to go around. The pie's big enough. And if we run out of pies, we'll figure out a different way to bake more.
Right. I want to get you back and talk to you more about your social media and how you do it, how you schedule things, and your use of assistants. The last question I have for you is, what do you do with all the leads you generate? Do you handle every single person that calls or texts you and says, Jazz, I want to buy a house. I like your style. I want to work with you. Do you handle every single person that contacts you? Or are you distributing this to your team?
Yeah, so what happens is that if somebody wants to invest into a new build condo and or a multiplex or a duplex, that initial consultation would happen with me. And then internally in this room, I have 4 to 5 people that are my core staff. Like these are the 4 or 5 people that like I've been grooming for a very long time. I mean, without them, I wouldn't be doing this right now. Like hands down, those 4 or 5 people are like, they'll go wherever I go, and I'll take them wherever I go. We're gonna handle that part of the business. The second somebody wants to list a home or go see a home, that goes to one of my 54 agents. So I don't have that. I don't have the capability to personally go list a home or go show properties. That's all done with my 54 agents, depending on the geographical area that the client's looking into doing business.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's great. That's all the questions I had for today. So we're going to make some clips of this. We're going to do it exactly like you do.
Awesome. I really appreciate you having me on, Luke. Thank you so much. And I can't say it enough. Like, just congratulations, because you weren't one of the 90% of people that give up after their first 10 episodes. And that's a stat. Right, yeah. If you go on iTunes, 90% of podcasters stop within their first 10 episodes. And so you're in that top 10%. I mean, 200 and change episodes. Like, that's amazing. And just a big congratulations to you.
Thanks so much, Jazz. It's great to see you today. And hope we do this again soon. Let's not wait 18 months next time. Let's do it sooner.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay.